Hello guys, welcome to day 15 of our Star Biology review. We're almost done guys, 2 more days, we can do it. Today is a very short video. We're just going to discuss the carbon and nitrogen cycles and how they matter in an ecosystem and what happens when you disrupt their cycles. So, before we start, we're going to be on page 22 of our booklets, page 22. On page 22, you see an example of the carbon cycle. In the carbon cycle, you see the different pathways that carbon could take. So, we see things like photosynthesis. We have photosynthesis. We have respiration. We have decomposition. Here's respiration again. We have fossil fuels. So, in the carbon cycle, we are looking at the movement of carbon. Now, what is the carbon cycle? The carbon cycle is a process of carbon moving between the atmosphere, oceans, soil, rocks, and living organisms. Now, carbon is one of our vital, important elements of life. You guys are called carbon life forms, because we are made up of carbon. The sugars that make us up, the fats that make us up, the proteins that make us up, and nucleic acids all rely on carbon. Now, carbon is going to always be moving from the atmosphere to living forms, to the soil, to, the ocean, which is over here off to the side, to plants. And by moving carbon from one area to another, what is actually happening is we are getting a balancing of carbon in an ecosystem. Nature's really good about this. Carbon goes in, carbon must come out. Now, what are the pathways to remove carbon? We call these carbon sinks. They just absorb and take in a lot of carbon. Well, this can be stored, carbon can be stored in rocks, in the form of, let's say, charcoal, coal. Carbon can be stored and absorbed in the oceans. And in the case of plants and animals, they can store carbon through growth and breakdown. Now, plants in particular store carbon in a way that we have gone over, called photosynthesis. So this is one way that plants can absorb or remove carbon from the atmosphere. Plants are really good about this. Now, what are some ways that carbon can be added to the atmosphere, added back into the cycles? Well, this can be done through things like cellular respiration, breathing out carbon dioxide. This could be through decomposition, breaking down dead organisms. This could be volcanoes and general burning fossil fuels. So notice, ideas 1, 2, and 3 are all natural processes. So I'm going to kind of erase this real quick. 1, 2, and 3 are all natural processes. These are things that happen in balance. They are balanced processes. But the fourth idea here, burning fossil fuels, this is a human idea. And this makes things unbalanced. Now, why does the carbon cycle matter? because the carbon cycle is one way that we keep carbon dioxide in equal balanced amounts around the world. Carbon dioxide is what we call a greenhouse gas. It is there to trap heat in the atmosphere. As we add more CO2 to the atmosphere around us, we increase the rate of global climate change. Temperatures go up, and this is bad for the environment. Now, when we add too much carbon to the ecosystem, we can even get things like ocean acidification, which is where the oceans absorb carbon, and this causes the oceans to become more acidic. This will kill and harm the life in the ocean. Now, one other thing that can happen is we can get things like fertilizer, pesticides, things that add in extra carbon to waterways or the soil. And this is going to cause stress and kill or harm life around the ecosystems. So, looking at label X and label Y, we are looking at X being respiration, CO2 is being breathed out, and letter Y is called decomposition. What do animals breathe out? So in respiration, what are animals actually breathing out? This is CO2, carbon dioxide. This is cellular respiration. Now, coming back to plants, how do plants help out in this process? Well, here is our plant process right here. Plants remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere thanks to something called photosynthesis. And finally, what helps decompose dead matter and help cycle carbon? This is the decomposers. This is bacteria. Now let's look at page 23 for the nitrogen cycle. In the nitrogen cycle, we are looking at how nitrogen moves through an ecosystem. Nitrogen is one of the important elements of life. Now, just like the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle can also be disrupted thanks to human activity. So one big effect to the nitrogen cycle, one major change, is the destruction of soil bacteria. So this is if soil bacteria die. Bacteria are one of the most important parts of the nitrogen cycle. So if fewer bacteria are available to help fix nitrogen, change nitrogen to usable forms, then that means that plants are not going to have the nitrogen to grow. Less nitrogen is going to be returned to the atmosphere, and this is going to upset the balance. Now, if things like over-fertilization happen, where we add fertilizer to crops, and that fertilizer comes off into our water, they add excess nutrients, chemicals to water, this can cause what we call eutrophication. This is eutrophication right there. This is what we call algae blooms. Where algae, this is all algae up top. This is where algae starts to grow faster than it's supposed to, and it's going to block oxygen and sunlight. So sunlight, there's the sun. Sun rays cannot make it past the algae, which means the plants underneath are going to die. So let's go ahead and fill in our nitrogen cycle, in the atmosphere we have nitrogen gas, which is going to be your first blank. Now the lightning bolt, this is going to be what we call lightning fixation. This is going to change nitrogen from one form to another. Fixation equals change. So this is how nature changes nitrogen into different forms. Now down here, this is the bacteria. Very important. Put a star next to that guy. This is very important. Now, how is nitrogen from the air fixed or changed? In this case, we say using bacteria in the soil to fix or change nitrogen to usable forms for other organisms to use. So plants cannot get their nitrogen without bacteria first helping them change it to usable forms. We actually see this when we talk about things like planting crops. A lot of times farmers will plant crops like beans around their plants because beans have these bacteria in their roots that will help fix the nitrogen. Okay, guys, so for today, our